presentation, like you can see from the topic, is not really going to capture much of history. I'm not going to give you names of intergenerational changes or other people, but my focus will mainly be around encouraging us to see what we can do at this time to move our country forward based on other things that have already been done. First of all, let me say that I'm following a documentary by Nelson Mandela, and in his book Long Walk to Freedom, he talks a story about how his father used to take him along whenever he's going for meetings. And when they go for those meetings, normally he will sit back and listen to the elders as they speak and discuss issues then. He reflected by saying that his leadership ability and how well he did, and all of us know how Nelson Mandela performed so well, and he cannot be forgotten that was key in the process of promoting his development. So what I want to say is that normally when we are with others, the best thing we can do is to just sit down quiet and listen. And I want to deeply appreciate Honorable Marshall and the entire Liberian Elders of the Republic for the Bicentennial, for organizing such an event to reflect, to discuss, to bring forth papers and ideas that can help to advance our country. So I'm really very, very happy that we can have that done together. Also, as I was reflecting to come and talk about the generation, there was something that came to my mind, and that was that when we listen to the elders, we travel to the Word, or we travel the Word before us, right? As we listen to the professor, who were in 1820, 1822 coming along, travel the world before us. Yeah. And at the same time, we also feel motivated about the world we are in today, and also inspired about the world tomorrow. So again, I would like to say that we have the chance, especially this room has a lot of young people, and with others, we also sincerely appreciate that we can have such a chance to share with you and share with other people moving forward. So we are grateful to the Creator who allowed us. You know, the world has been a lot of challenges. Thank God we survived the Gbollie that when the COVID came, and many other issues. So whenever I actually see our gallery, I just think that those who are allowed to form part of a particular cycle or a particular generation are those who should provide answers. Not just necessarily to shift it to those who have gone. Those who have gone have done what they could do, but then they have been able to provide a chance for those who are yet around to take the responsibility of that moving forward. So I always actually personally see that as a challenge that we should not take for granted. Now I'll be talking to you shortly about intergenerational change, and our focus is basically how can we bridge the gaps between the older adults, the elders, and then young people. We have had a lot of debates around this discussion here and there, but to be able to advance our nation to another level, we need to close the gaps. And closing the gaps will help us to do better. But before I do that, I just part of challenging us and going to the points that we need to do to close the gap. Last year there was a team from the US that came to visit Liberia. You know, there have been some efforts to reactivate the tourism and cultural facets of our society, the cultural and tourism sector. You know, they're trying to make sure we recall ourselves and do better. So part of that visit, this delegation took some young Liberians, including me, who were part of the Mandela Washington Fellowship 2021, and other people from Mikans, to the Providence Island. Many of us know the Providence Island, very historic. The arrival, the thinking, and many things perhaps we see here were first taught at that island. After we walked around the island, we saw some things that have been documented and kept. You know, we were taking on a garden tour of the place and show many things as young people and as other people visiting. After this particular activity, we were given a chance to sit down and think and really analyze those things that the people who came were thinking about. Personally, I was asking myself, let me share the questions with you. There's a point I want to connect us to the change that we are proposing. The first question I asked when I was seated there as part of the reflection was, how was it like when the first ship of free black slaves landed on this island? How was it like? Because these are people who have been working marginalized, treated as if they were subhuman in different ways, and then now they have landed in a strange land. How was it like for them? The second question I asked myself on that island was what were their feelings, their hopes and aspirations, and what did they have to go through to establish this nation? What were basically their hopes, their feelings and aspirations about establishing a country we now call Liberia today, and what did they need to do to get through that? Today we may see some systems and institutions in place, but this is like having a clean sheet where you will nothing almost, even though people have been around, but there is no clear-cut system that was controlling things like governance and all kinds of issues. So I was thinking, how were they feeling? What were their aspirations? And then, what were they thinking that they need to go through? The final question I asked, as part of that reflection, and that will conclude before I move deep into my presentation, was that if people like Gigi Roberts and many others were here today, what would they say about the Liberia we have created? If those people who came 200 years ago, as we celebrate the Bicentennial, you can just talk about, you don't want to talk about the fighting and different issues that they have to go through. But if they were here today, 2022, what would they have said about Liberia? From the reflections, personally, I resolved that we have a responsibility to this nation. I was really moved and said to myself, we cannot afford to disappoint these people. We can't really afford these sacrifices, some of them with their blood, different things they went through. We cannot afford to disappoint them. Not just them, we can also afford to disappoint the current generation and the generations that we have ahead. So in this meeting, my presentation, as we have this gathering, we have to draw ourselves to the point of reflecting. First, how were those people feeling? What did they have to go through? And if they were here with us today, what would they have done? If Gigi Roberts looks at today's presidency, he looks at the health sector, he looks at different areas, different things, education sector that he invested so much about. If we look at it, if you were here to look at it, why would they have that? So my first challenge to us up front, before I talk about the topic, is to really make us all the time to reflect that this is not just about us. There are people who have paid the price for the country for where it is now. A book that should have been released here is called The Compendium of the Presidencies of the Republic of Liberia. Hopefully next month, that book will be coming through. And when you see different presidents, what they went through, their challenges, the context of the world during their time, and how they maneuver, some of them did so much. But sometimes today we just sit and conclude that we are, of course we have expected more. But my point here is that complaining about the dead, complaining about those who have passed by and did what they could do, it's just something, but we cannot shift the transformation on them. It can only be the people who are around should rise up. I'm happy that the elders are in a strong business of creating that transformation. It's very, very important. Very, very important. They are doing different activities. Just at the start of the year, I have an organization called Free Liberia, and we decided to organize a program called Passing It On. And this is what we were thinking about. Is for the elders to pass on their ideas to the younger generation. To make sure that these are working libraries, that they should be able to open their libraries, their doors for us, the young ones, to read and to follow instructions so that we can repeat or pay the same price they paid before. So this is just something that we have to think about. To conclude the aspect of that, I learned that indeed, when we miss history, we miss the value and significance of the thing. We miss the history, the things that people struggle about, the things that people did, and different things. We miss the value and the significance of the thing. And of course, history is both a motivation and also a warning. But most time if somebody blunder, maybe talk about kings, kind of election that happened, today, we don't have to repeat such a mistake. It should be a warning. If there was something marvelous that unfolded then, it should be a motivation that should be able to place all of us in a position that we have to act in a way to create transformation for our nation. So let me move quickly to talk about intergenerational change and trying to bridge the gaps in this regard to promote Liberia's development. The first thing I want to say is that the strength of any nation is based on a solid bridge of transition between older adults and young people. If we don't have very good connection of ideas of all being transferred smoothly, then we'll have a gap. There were great values in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 50s, and even before that the current generation, I know will not pick everything, but we need to tap into that. That's the first statement I want to make. And a place where older adults and elders can transfer the baton is very, very critical. And that young people should be prepared to hold it. Because sometimes somebody can send the checks or send the information, but for us, the young people, are we open enough to receive the baton? If we are not open enough to hold what has been presented, then we lose it. And losing it, we may not be able to get it back. And then, absolutely no society truly strives to a greater and nobler heights without that system of intergenerational change. And Liberia, we need to step it up. We need to step up the process of that transition to be able to make sure that enough we can have the generational change. Failure to transform yesterday's morals and norms and values places any society not only in danger but at the loss, at a serious loss. because those things are investments of the nation. So we must be able to have such. So what is intergenerational change? Intergenerational change is a nationalistic consciousness and desire to be and create change in the society that outlives one generation or one season of a group of people to another group of people, which means that there was a generation that was able to turn things over to one generation, and there is one now that should be able to prepare the nation to another generation. So, and that should be the desire of every human being, to have that smooth transition. I do believe, and in one of my books, I actually have two of my books here, I highlighted, I think it's chapter 10 in this book. Most of my presentation will come from there. I didn't do, all right. So I'll highlight some points actually from my book. I didn't do an article or direct research for this, but I believe to create, I believe that the bridge we have crossing from one generation to another, we need to do more. And that's why I really commend this idea that different presentations. I haven't gotten the history of the health sector. It's my first time actually listening to how the health sector even operates over time. That's a very useful information. So I believe that for us to have intergenerational change, we must first work on our mentality. I call it generational thinking mentality. Now, most of the time, we feel that, especially the young, that the old people don't want to give us chance, and then the other people will say the other one. If you have such talk, one after another, you are not going to work together enough. So what we're talking about, creating a change, will be difficult in that light. So the first thing I believe we can work on is basically generational thinking mentality, a thought that life is beyond me and the present world, which means that we're not just focused on ourselves, what we get or what we receive, but how can we harness our strength and everything to make sure that things work for the better. And knowing also that, yes, I may not be the one to achieve it, and many of the people did that. People that follow will be able to do that. Intergenerational change should be a patriotic duty of every person. I see it as a patriotic duty because the world is built on a system for transition, for change. You can't stop it, all right? You can't stop those who are in their 80s, their 90s from aging and living the same. And those who are young, you can also stop yourself from going. So the best thing you can do is to be able to team up, to work together to create that change. And in the past, different countries, we saw how other people really thought beyond themselves. To create the change, I will suggest some things for the elders, and I'll also provide some suggestions for us in the room, our young people. For the elders, to be able to create intergenerational change, we need to prioritize what I call pro-youth thinking. Pro-youth thinking, meaning that thinking in favor of young people. I'm happy also to say that this gathering has many young people. I think it's a sign of pro-youth thinking. We should be able to think in favor of young people, and not to also see young people as those who are not serious. I always feel bad if I hear an adult, maybe an older adult, saying that young people these days and trying to categorize. I'm not saying you cannot criticize or create checkpoints for young people, but to reach a conclusion that young people cannot do this, cannot do that, they are not serious. I often, it's both ways. Of course, you give yours and people should be willing to receive, but before you were willing to receive. So what was done to make other people make you to receive? Perhaps you need to do or institute your own mechanism that will make the current generation to be able to receive. For us concluding, that today's youth, their XYZ will not help our nation. So we should stop the act of just categorizing young people and calling them all sorts of names. I know you were a young person and the generation then did not place you in such category. The second thing, I'm providing some suggestions now, older adults can do is to also be today and tomorrow's cautious. I'm glad that when people are always thinking about now, but also that there will be another day, is very, very important. And I stated here that a tomorrow without a prepared young people through our actions is a blatant failure. Because all the things you put together, all the sacrifices you have made, if young people are not prepared enough to take over, to step in, it's just a failure because it can be destroyed in a quite very short period of time. So I would suggest that we should have that thought. The third suggestion I have is that we should be able, like we're doing now, to as much as possible transfer knowledge and skills to the younger generation. Earlier I said that the elders in this room are like a walking library. Now, if you sit with an elder, you get so much thing that even if you're reading a book, maybe you read 3 to 4 books, you may not even get some of the information that they are going to release to you. So we have to tap into that to see how can we influence positively the younger generation. I believe that it's also very important. So those things that have been written through you, that you've learned and you've developed over time, you cannot go with those things to the grave. Because in that place has no use for them. The only people who are used for them are those who are on the ground. And it will be very good that those who are here benefit from that. Of course, lastly, as an encouragement or advice to the elders, is that young people should always be a part of it. Most of the time, if you really want people to learn a thing faster or to really be a part of it, they have to be brought on board. So we should always capture their participation in the process. Alright, so basically I provided, I think, 4 or 5 suggestions for the elders for you thinking. You should be cautious about today and tomorrow. We should be able to transfer knowledge and skills. We should be able to mentor young people. I didn't mention that. And finally, we should be able to allow young people to participate, because in that process they will grow. To my fellow young people inside here, we have to start the process by respecting our ancestors, respecting our elders, respecting those who have come before us. These people have had different challenges, and we can't just blame them for today and all kind of shifting here and there. We have to start this with having respect for our elders and also honoring them. Our leaders yesterday, I believe, did not fail us. They did what they could do with the circumstances and conditions they have. Because the first thing is that if we make our mind to just be in a way that other people have failed us, you also think about failing another person. You think that it has been a tradition, and that tradition will have to be taken to the next level. So we ourselves need to be humble, we need to be open, we need to be more diligent, we need to be more patriotic, we need to be not just waiting for things to happen for our country. The strength and energy we have, how can we create some groups to be able to take meaningful activities that will show signs that we are doing quite well in the society. To conclude, I would like to again say that this is a wonderful gathering, because we have the opportunity to reflect, but to also not forget that before us there are different things that are happening, and that if we are to make our country to speed up in its development, then the transition must always be so well. I will end with 2 quotes. There's a quote by Dr. C. William Allen. You definitely know him, former Director General of the Civil Service Agency. He said most Liberians do not appreciate that Liberia is where it is today because of the collective contribution of those who came before us. And furthermore, that the sustainability of our country will depend on the ability of our future generation and what legacy they inherit. It's a very powerful statement that we all have to reflect that people have not just been doing things anyhow. So the generations unborn will need to be aware that all of us will have to rally efforts to be able to create change. Blame shifting, my parents didn't do this, they didn't do that, will not be able to help our nation. So again, I want you, as I reflected on the Providence Island, to also create that reflection. Think about when they first came. What did they have to feel like, when they first came? How was it like for them? And what were their feelings, their hopes, and their aspirations? And what they had to go through to create the Liberia we have? But not stopping there, if they were here today, do we have a Liberia that is really proud of? Our answers should be able to give us more courage and resilience and thinking for our country, that we can be able to not just celebrate past glory. It's very good to talk about being the first, the modern hospital in West Africa today. Can we create such a story again? I think if we can rise up and have intergenerational change and proper transition and focusing on our country and stop blaming, I think we can rekindle that particular thing. And the last quote, Rabbi Tafon said, "You are not obligated to complete the work, but you neither are free to abandon it." So to our elders, it's very important. This thing, we can abandon it. As long as we are here, we have to hold this thing, work it out, and change our country for the better. Thank you very much.